The Galactic Empire spanned thousands of systems, a force so vast that few dared to question its rule. For centuries, they had operated with total dominance, their fleets patrolling the stars and keeping every known world under control. If a civilization showed signs of resistance, the Empire's policy was swift and brutal: destroy, subdue, or make an example of them. It was an unchallenged empire built on fear, and they took pride in their supremacy. Their fleets were unmatched, their weaponry advanced, and their technological prowess beyond anything most species could dream of. They were, in every way, untouchable. Then came humanity. A species tucked away on a small planet in an unremarkable sector of the galaxy, Earth should have been insignificant, an afterthought. The Empire's surveys of Earth's technology indicated a race just stepping into interstellar travel, experimenting with their first prototypes of space vessels and rudimentary weapons. They were curious, perhaps, but hardly worthy of attention. To the Empire, humanity was an oddity, the kind of civilization that might prove interesting in a few hundred years if they survived that long. But humanity didn't wait. They accelerated, throwing their resources into development at a speed that took even the Empire's analysts by surprise. Earth scientists and engineers worked tirelessly, building a series of prototype ships, testing new materials, experimenting with weapon systems that were far more powerful than anything their fledgling status should have allowed. The Empire noticed but paid little mind. They had seen it before, civilizations scrambling to catch up, to bridge the gap. They would reach a plateau soon enough, and the Empire would still be far beyond their reach. The Empire's arrogance was absolute. Reports from distant sectors describing Earth's advancements were buried, passed off as trivial developments. After all, what could one planet possibly produce that would rival an empire spanning galaxies? Earth was, in their eyes, amusing at best. If they became too ambitious, they would be reminded of their place, just as many others had before them. The Empire's analysts began to pick up faint signals of humanity's prototypes, whispers of advancements in energy shielding and experimental weaponry. Rumors of strange technologies and unique materials found only in Earth's system emerged. Yet each time, the Empire's high command dismissed them. An isolated world with a few clever scientists won't change the balance of power, they scoffed. To them, Earth was still a primitive world trying to imitate the grandeur of interstellar empires with makeshift creations that couldn't possibly threaten a galactic powerhouse. But humanity was relentless. Earth's brightest minds pushed limits, testing each prototype with rigor, sacrificing stability for innovation. They were determined, driven by a survival instinct that made them work at a pace unheard of. They poured resources into a project the Empire deemed foolish: one ship, a vessel that was to be the pinnacle of Earth's technological capability. It was a long-shot endeavor, a desperate attempt to defend themselves against the behemoth that loomed over the galaxy. They called it the Proteus, a name that meant change and adaptability, something Earth knew would be essential if they ever hoped to defend themselves. The Empire took note of the name but didn't take it seriously. A single ship? Let them build it. The Imperial admirals laughed. They'll learn the limits of their ambition soon enough. They believed no force in the galaxy could match their fleet, especially not a species as young and undeveloped as humans. They had seen this pattern before, worlds that dared to rise only to be swiftly put down. Earth would be no different, they thought, and so the Proteus project was ignored, passed over as a laughable endeavor by an inferior race. Unbeknownst to the Empire, the Proteus was no ordinary ship. Earth had poured everything into its design, focusing on a blend of strength, resilience, and adaptability. The Proteus would carry Earth's finest weaponry, experimental energy shields, and an advanced stealth system. It was a prototype in the truest sense, untested, unproven, and designed with one goal in mind: to stand as a shield against any force that threatened Earth. They were not building a fleet, they were building an equalizer, a vessel that could take on the Empire's best. Still, the Empire's arrogance was unshaken. Despite minor reports, faint murmurs of human advancements, they paid no heed. They continued to see humanity as insignificant, a species that might one day pose a mild annoyance but never a real threat. They believed their fleets were unbeatable, their technology unmatched. Any advancements Earth made would eventually reach a ceiling, they would hit the limits of their abilities, and that would be the end of it. The Empire's dismissive attitude extended to every level of its ranks. Imperial scientists, soldiers, and analysts alike mocked the idea that Earth could ever rise to challenge them. Reports from Imperial scouts hinted at strange movements, of a large, stealth-capable vessel unlike anything humanity should have been able to produce. Each time, these reports were cast aside, chalked up to exaggeration, tricks of radar, or the product of overactive imaginations. But humanity continued undeterred by the Empire's ignorance. They worked in silence, fueled by a purpose that had long been forgotten among the stars. The scientists and engineers on Earth knew they had only one shot, one chance to show the Empire what they were capable of. To them, the Proteus wasn't just a ship, it was a symbol, a defiance of the odds stacked against them. It represented the ingenuity, resilience, and strength of a species that refused to be overlooked. The Proteus's capabilities were pushed beyond theoretical limits in tests and simulations, and yet Earth's leaders knew that no amount of preparation would guarantee survival in a real engagement with the Empire. If the Proteus failed, if humanity's prototype crumbled against the Empire's power, Earth would be left defenseless. But they accepted the risk, driven by a collective determination that had nothing to do with conquest and everything to do with survival. The Empire's arrogance had given them the time they needed, the time to create something that would catch even the mightiest force in the galaxy off guard. Word of the Proteus began to spread within the Empire's outer territories. Scouts and minor officials noticed its tests, whispers of a ship that defied the norms, a ship that didn't follow the Empire's conventions of power and design. And yet, no one in the Empire's upper ranks took notice. Earth was still deemed unworthy of their attention, and so the Proteus continued its preparations, honing its systems, training its crew, each day becoming more than just a prototype. The Galactic Empire continued to sit comfortably atop its throne, oblivious to the threat that was quietly growing in the corner of their empire. It was a level of hubris that Earth's leaders found astounding. But they knew better than to expect anything else from a force that had never faced true resistance. They understood that when the Proteus was finally revealed, when the Empire's assumptions were shattered, it would change everything. In the silence of Earth's orbital facilities, in hidden stations spread across the system, humanity's resolve grew. They would be ready when the time came. The Empire may have ignored them. In the depths of Earth's hidden shipyards, the Proteus took shape. It was unlike any vessel humanity had ever built, the culmination of years of research, planning, and sacrifice. Every design decision had been calculated, optimized to give it the best possible chance of withstanding the Empire's overwhelming firepower. Engineers and scientists had pushed the boundaries of known materials and technology, pouring everything they had into a ship that represented humanity's last line of defense and ultimate hope. The Proteus wasn't just built for durability, it was built to evade detection. The ship's hull was crafted from an alloy designed to absorb and disperse radar and scanning waves, rendering it almost invisible to conventional sensors. They called it ghost metal, a material that had been tested rigorously for its stealth capabilities. This gave the Proteus a unique advantage. It could drift, undetected, through enemy territory, allowing its crew to get close enough to strike before the Empire even realized they were there. It was humanity's answer to the Empire's vast network of surveillance and control, a ship that could hide in plain sight. But stealth alone wouldn't be enough. Earth's engineers had equipped the Proteus with experimental energy shields, a technology that was still in its infancy. Rather than rely on brute force, the shields were designed to adapt dynamically, adjusting their energy output in response to incoming fire. It was a new approach to defense, one that used algorithms to modulate the shield's strength in real time, maximizing power where it was needed and conserving energy elsewhere. This was Earth's gamble, an untested, adaptive defense system that could, theoretically, outlast the Empire's bombardments and create small windows of counterattack. Inside the ship, the crew trained endlessly. They knew the stakes. They were the first and perhaps the last line of defense for humanity. Each officer and engineer on board had been handpicked, a crew of seasoned veterans, young prodigies, and specialists in fields the Empire hadn't even considered valuable. They ran through simulations day and night, perfecting their maneuvers, learning how to use the Proteus to its fullest potential. In the event of battle, they would need to be quicker, smarter, and more agile than anything the Empire had ever faced. It was a grueling regimen, but every crew member was prepared to go to any length to defend Earth. The Proteus's weapon systems were equally unconventional. The ship wasn't designed to engage in direct combat with fleets. It was built for precision strikes, with weapons that could penetrate and disable specific targets rather than cause mass destruction. Engineers had developed high-powered plasma lances, designed to punch through the Empire's thick hulls with laser-like accuracy. The lances were paired with directed energy missiles, which could be launched in silence, hitting their targets with pinpoint precision. The Proteus wasn't meant to outgun the Empire. It was designed to outthink and outmaneuver them. In a final stroke of ingenuity, Earth's scientists had equipped the Proteus with a specialized EMP system. Unlike traditional EMPs, which caused general electrical failure, this system was tuned to disrupt the communication frequencies the Empire's fleets relied on. By targeting specific bands of communication, the Proteus could effectively isolate sections of an enemy fleet, cutting them off from their commanders and throwing them into disarray. It was the tactical edge humanity needed, a way to disrupt the Empire's cohesion and force them to operate in a state of confusion. Despite the Proteus's many advancements, it remained a gamble. Earth scientists and engineers knew that they had taken extraordinary risks with this prototype. Many of its systems were untested in live combat, and there was no guarantee that the ship's stealth, shields, and weaponry would function perfectly under the extreme conditions of war. But humanity was left with no other choice. They had to trust in their ingenuity, in their capacity to adapt, and in the skills of their crew. The Proteus was a testament to the willpower of a species that had always fought for survival, even when the odds seemed impossible. The crew felt the weight of this responsibility. They understood that in a galaxy ruled by the Empire, they were one of a kind, a single ship against an enemy so vast and powerful it could hardly be comprehended. And yet they trained, they planned, and they prepared, knowing they held humanity's future in their hands. They were determined to prove that Earth was not just a backwater planet to be dismissed, but a world of resourcefulness and resilience. As they prepared for their final tests, the Empire continued to dismiss humanity as inconsequential. Imperial command logs casually noted the movements of Earth's primitive ships, their analysts scoffing at the data they received. But deep in Earth's command center, humanity's leaders knew what was at stake. They knew the Proteus might be their only chance to deter the Empire and secure a future free from domination. Their hopes rested on the shoulders of one ship, a vessel designed not just to defend but to defy expectations. The crew of the Proteus completed their last round of tests. Every system was analyzed, every potential failure accounted for. There were moments of doubt, but they knew hesitation could cost them everything. They had chosen their path, one that would bring them face to face with the Empire's overwhelming might. For each member of the crew, this wasn't just a mission, it was a statement. They weren't here to survive. They were here to show the galaxy what humanity was capable of. In the days leading up to their launch, the crew made their final preparations. Communication lines were opened, farewell messages exchanged with loved ones back on Earth. Each member understood the risks, and yet none wavered. They had become a family of their own, united by purpose, forged by the weight of an impossible task. They knew that they might not come back, that they were stepping into the unknown with only one another and their faith in the Proteus. The Proteus's final hours on Earth were filled with a quiet resolve. Engineers made last-minute adjustments, mechanics worked through the night, and scientists reviewed data endlessly, their eyes filled with a mixture of anxiety and hope. And when the time came, the Proteus launched, slipping silently into space with a crew who understood that they were not just explorers. They were pioneers, fighters, defenders of a world that would no longer be ignored. As they left Earth's orbit, the crew looked out at the stars, knowing that somewhere in the vastness of space, the Empire's fleets lay in wait, oblivious to the challenge that was coming their way. The Empire had finally taken notice. Reports had come in from scattered patrols on the outer reaches of Earth's system, observing strange movements and advanced, unidentified signals. But what they couldn't dismiss was the presence of a single, massive vessel, a ship far larger and more advanced than anything they expected from Earth. It was unlike any design they recognized, slipping through sensors and appearing only briefly before disappearing again. After years of ignoring humanity, the Empire's command now saw it as a rising annoyance that needed to be quelled. They dispatched a full fleet, confident that their overwhelming numbers would remind this backwater planet of its place. As the Empire's fleet entered Earth's sector, they maintained a formation designed for intimidation. Hundreds of ships moved as a single unit, creating an impenetrable wall of firepower. Their commanders, experienced in the Empire's brutal tactics, saw this as nothing more than a demonstration of strength. The orders were clear: crush any resistance quickly and return to the Empire's real business. The fleet's admiral watched from the bridge of his flagship, amused at the idea that humanity thought it could resist. The Proteus had been waiting. Stationed just outside the main fleet's range, hidden by its advanced stealth capabilities, the crew monitored the Empire's approach. Earth's leaders had warned them of what was coming, but seeing the fleet in person was something else entirely. It was a force that could obliterate entire worlds without a second thought, a show of Imperial might that was as overwhelming as it was terrifying. Yet on board the Proteus, fear gave way to focus. The crew had been trained for this, prepared to engage against impossible odds. They were ready. As the Empire's fleet closed in, the Proteus made its first move. Using its advanced stealth systems, the ship slipped through the edges of the fleet, bypassing the initial waves of smaller ships with ease. The Empire's sensors struggled to detect it, picking up only faint traces before losing the signal again. The Proteus was a ghost, invisible to their technology, moving with precision and purpose. The Empire's commanders ordered adjustments, recalibrating their sensors, but the Proteus moved faster than they could respond, adapting its position and evading every attempt to lock on. Then, without warning, the Proteus struck. Its plasma lances fired with pinpoint accuracy, piercing the shields and hulls of multiple Imperial ships before they could even raise a defense. The blasts were so precise that each hit disabled critical systems, leaving the ships floating powerless in space. The Empire's fleet, built for brute force, had never encountered an attack like this, one that relied on precision rather than sheer firepower. Their ships began to drift, signals cut off, unable to communicate with the main fleet. Confusion rippled through the Imperial ranks. The Proteus continued its assault, slipping in and out of sight, targeting key positions in the formation. Each strike was calculated to dismantle the fleet's cohesion, creating pockets of chaos among the Imperial ships. The Empire's commanders, used to foes that either attacked head-on or fled in terror, were unprepared for a ship that could strike and vanish in seconds. The Proteus was everywhere and nowhere, hitting from angles they hadn't anticipated, disrupting the lines of communication and rendering entire sections of the fleet isolated. In a desperate attempt to regain control, the Empire's admiral ordered all ships to lock down their positions and concentrate their fire on any sign of movement. But the Proteus was designed for this very scenario. It adapted, moving with an agility that no Imperial ship could match, evading incoming fire with ease. The Empire's vast numbers were rendered meaningless, as each ship found itself unable to anticipate or counter the Proteus's next move. Then came the EMP pulse. The Proteus had positioned itself in the center of a cluster of Imperial ships, and with a calculated strike, it unleashed a wave of energy that disrupted the communication channels within the fleet. Entire divisions of ships went dark, cut off from their commanders and each other. In the chaos, some ships began firing blindly, mistaking friendly vessels for enemies. The Empire's fleet, once a coordinated force, now drifted in a state of confusion, its own strength turned against it. Seeing the chaos unfold, the admiral of the Imperial fleet attempted to issue new orders, but the communication disruption left him helpless. His once powerful fleet had been reduced to isolated pockets, unable to regroup or respond. The Proteus exploited every moment, using its stealth to slip through the fleet, picking off ships one by one. It was a brutal dismantling of an empire that had always believed itself untouchable. With each strike, the Proteus crew felt their confidence grow. They watched as the Empire's ships fell apart, their once imposing fleet now scattered and vulnerable. The Proteus's plasma lances continued to fire with unerring precision, and the directed energy missiles found their marks, breaking down the fleet's formation piece by piece. For the first time in their history, the Empire's ships found themselves on the defensive, struggling to keep up with an opponent that defied all expectations. Amidst the confusion, a group of Imperial ships attempted to break off and regroup, hoping to launch a counterattack. The Proteus's crew anticipated the maneuver and moved swiftly, positioning themselves to intercept. They unleashed a series of strikes that left the regrouping ships crippled, engines offline, drifting helplessly in the void. It was a message, a statement that Earth was no longer a passive planet waiting to be subdued. As the battle wore on, the Empire's fleet grew desperate. The Imperial commanders, once confident in their overwhelming power, were reduced to defensive tactics, their arrogance shattered by a single ship. They had never considered that a species like humanity could produce a weapon capable of this level of devastation. They had assumed that Earth would bow to their strength, but instead, they had encountered a force that defied their understanding of warfare. The Proteus showed no mercy. Each Imperial ship that attempted to regroup was met with relentless precision strikes, its shields overpowered, its hull breached. The Empire's commanders finally realized that they were facing more than just a ship. They were facing a species that refused to be conquered. Earth was no longer a distant, insignificant world. They were a threat, a defiant force that had shattered the Empire's illusion of invincibility. As the last few ships attempted to retreat, the Proteus followed, ensuring that the message was clear. Earth would not be intimidated, would not be conquered, and would not be ignored. The Empire's fleet, once the terror of the galaxy, was left scattered and broken, remnants of its former power drifting in silence. In those final moments, the Admiral watched in disbelief as the Proteus moved through the wreckage, unharmed, untouched, and victorious. For the first time, the Empire understood that they were not alone at the top. Humanity had risen, and they had just issued a challenge the Empire could not ignore. The Proteus drifted through the remnants of the once mighty fleet, its hull gleaming against the scattered debris of Imperial ships. Every system was intact, its shields hardly tested, its crew sharp and unshaken. For the Empire, this was a disaster beyond reckoning. A single human prototype had not only held its own but dismantled an entire fleet without sustaining a single substantial hit. Messages of alarm and disbelief flooded Imperial communication channels as word of the defeat began to spread. Earth's leaders, monitoring the battle from afar, watched in silence as the impossible unfolded before their eyes. They dared to hope that the Proteus might slow the Empire's advance, that perhaps it could even inflict a few costly losses. But what had happened was beyond any expectation. The Empire, once believed to be untouchable, had been brought to its knees by a single ship, a ship that wasn't part of some vast fleet or built by an ancient civilization but crafted on Earth, a backwater world. It was a turning point, and the galaxy would never be the same. Meanwhile, the Empire scrambled to respond. The remnants of the fleet attempted to regroup, desperate to salvage any semblance of dignity. Imperial High Command couldn't afford a loss of this magnitude, not from Earth. Orders came swiftly, dispatching reinforcements and calling on experienced warships from neighboring sectors. The plan was clear: overwhelm and destroy the Proteus at all costs, erase this embarrassment from the Empire's record, and reassert control. But the Empire's calculations hadn't accounted for one crucial factor: humanity's resilience and adaptability. The reinforcements arrived in waves, each group more prepared, more heavily armed, certain they could put an end to Earth's defiance. The Empire was a machine of war, built on endless resources and soldiers conditioned to obey. Yet, as each new fleet engaged, the Proteus used everything it had, slipping between ships with unmatched precision, taking them out in pairs and squads before they could respond. It wasn't just technology at work, it was strategy, unpredictability, and the sheer willpower of humanity. The Empire's strength had always relied on numbers and fear, But in these battles, they found that brute force couldn't match agility and precision. The Proteus's weapons, initially experimental, proved devastating. Plasma lances sliced through ships like paper, while energy missiles found their marks with deadly accuracy, collapsing shields and dismantling the largest cruisers in minutes. Earth's engineers had outdone themselves, creating a ship capable of operating both offensively and defensively in ways that defied conventional tactics. Each strike was a tactical masterpiece, and the crew's ability to adapt mid-battle made them a force unlike any the Empire had ever faced. In each clash, the Empire lost more ground, its ships reduced to floating debris or forced into retreat. They realized, far too late, that the Proteus was more than a ship. It was a game-changer, a challenge to everything they thought they understood about galactic warfare. The Empire's doctrine of fear and overwhelming numbers fell short, shattered by a single vessel and the crew who commanded it. Imperial High Command issued new orders in a final bid to save face. They mobilized their elite ships, war-tested vessels piloted by the Empire's best. They would not let Earth's audacity stand. But the Proteus's crew remained undeterred. For them, each new wave of Imperial ships was an opportunity to prove that humanity was far more than what the Empire had presumed. They had worked, fought, and sacrificed to build this ship. They weren't about to let that effort go to waste. The elite ships arrived in a new formation, one designed to surround and overwhelm the Proteus by sheer proximity. The Empire's tactics shifted to a more coordinated approach, deploying strike teams meant to disable rather than destroy, aiming to capture the ship and its crew, hoping to learn the secrets behind its power. They believed that humanity had made a mistake, that this time, with their best forces, they would finally bring the Proteus down. But the Proteus adapted once again. Its crew had anticipated that the Empire would try to capture them, understanding the importance of keeping their ship, and its technology, out of Imperial hands. Using their EMP systems, they launched a calculated disruption, cutting off communication lines between the elite ships. Once again, the Empire found itself isolated, each unit forced to act independently in the face of the Proteus's unrelenting strikes. In one swift move, the Proteus broke through their attempted containment, dismantling their strongest formation and leaving the elite ships vulnerable. The Empire's top commanders watched in disbelief as the ship disabled or destroyed vessel after vessel, its strategies unpredictable, its power undeniable. Earth had created a force that defied the very foundation of the Empire's military doctrine. And in doing so, humanity had shattered the illusion of Imperial invincibility. As the battle raged on, the Empire's confidence crumbled. Their commanders, once so certain of victory, faced a reality they'd never prepared for. Each new fleet sent against the Proteus met the same fate. Their strength turned into weakness as they tried and failed to overpower the ship. The Empire's war machine, for the first time, was broken. News of the defeat spread through the galaxy like wildfire. Allied planets that had long suffered under the Empire's rule saw the impossible unfold. A lone world had stood up and fought back, sending shockwaves through the galaxy. For the first time, systems that had lived in fear glimpsed hope. Earth had proven that resistance was possible, that the Empire's stranglehold on the galaxy could be broken. Humanity's defiance became a rallying cry, a reminder that even the most powerful empires could fall. Back on Earth, the Proteus's victory was celebrated, but not with arrogance. Humanity knew they had only won a single battle, a critical one, but not the war. They had shown the galaxy what they were capable of, but the Empire was still vast and dangerous. Yet, for the first time, humanity was not alone. Messages of support, admiration, and interest came from distant systems and allied worlds. Planets that had once been silenced under Imperial rule now looked to Earth, inspired by the courage of a world that had dared to fight back. In the aftermath, the Empire withdrew, licking its wounds, realizing that their hold on the galaxy was no longer as secure as it had once been. The Proteus had broken through the Empire's walls of arrogance, opening a door to a future where resistance wasn't just possible but tangible. Earth was no longer a curiosity to be ignored. It was a beacon of resilience and a threat to any who thought they could rule unchecked. The Proteus returned home, battered but intact, a symbol of everything humanity had achieved and everything it still aspired to become. Earth's leaders and scientists immediately began their next phase, refining the ship's technology, improving their defenses, knowing that the Empire would eventually return, angrier and more prepared than ever. But humanity was ready. They had been tested, pushed to their limits, and they had emerged stronger. They would not cower or yield. They had fought, and they would continue to fight, fueled by the knowledge that they had forever changed the balance of power in the galaxy. And so, Earth stood its ground, knowing the Empire's eyes were now fixed on them, but no longer afraid. The news of the Empire's defeat spread quickly, reaching every corner of the galaxy, from the most remote outposts to the densely populated systems under Imperial rule. Word traveled that a single human ship had dismantled an Imperial fleet, sending shockwaves through a galaxy that had never believed such a feat possible. For worlds long subjected to the Empire's harsh rule, the Proteus became a symbol of hope, a sign that resistance was possible, even against a force that had seemed untouchable. The Empire's reputation, carefully cultivated over centuries of dominance, began to unravel. Other species and planets, once too fearful to even contemplate defiance, started to ask themselves if the Empire was truly as invincible as they'd been led to believe. Messages poured into Earth from unexpected allies, civilizations that had survived on the fringes, hiding from the Empire's gaze, now wanting to stand with humanity, inspired by the Proteus's victory. Earth had shown the galaxy that they were not just survivors but fighters, capable of challenging the greatest power in known space. On Earth, leaders recognized the importance of this moment. The Proteus had done more than defend their world, it had revealed their potential to the galaxy. And now, with the Empire's attention fixed on them, they understood the gravity of their situation. They could no longer afford to be a solitary planet with isolated defenses. Humanity needed allies, and they needed to be prepared for what would inevitably come next. Earth's leaders reached out, seeking to build a coalition, to offer their knowledge and technology to those who would stand with them against the Empire's dominance. In response, the Empire seethed with anger. Losing to Earth was more than just a defeat, it was a blow to their authority, a tear in the fabric of control they had woven so meticulously. The Empire's high command held emergency meetings, debating strategies and seeking ways to regain their lost power. But they knew that if they acted too quickly, they would only reinforce the image of their own vulnerability. They could no longer dismiss humanity, they had to account for this new force that had exposed their weaknesses. For the Empire, the defeat had another consequence. Whispers of dissent grew louder among their own people, particularly in the outer systems, where planets had long borne the brunt of Imperial taxation and control. They had watched, for years, as their worlds were drained of resources, all in service to a distant Imperial core. Now, seeing that a single human ship had crippled the Empire's fleet, these systems questioned why they continued to endure Imperial rule. Some even began to speak of rebellion, fueled by the realization that Earth had lit a spark no empire could extinguish. Humanity's victory spurred a wave of change across the galaxy. A network of resistance movements began to form, quietly, in the shadows, as different species and systems started to reach out to each other, bound by a shared goal. Earth found itself at the center of this emerging alliance. Leaders, scientists, and strategists came together to exchange knowledge, to learn from humanity's defiance, and to prepare for what was to come. The Proteus, once just a symbol of Earth's survival, had become a rallying point for a galaxy ready to fight back. But the Empire, wounded and desperate, prepared for a counterattack. They poured resources into developing new technology, crafting strategies to combat the Proteus's unique capabilities, and training elite forces to eradicate any future resistance. Their spies moved across systems, sowing seeds of doubt and fear, warning that Earth's defiance would bring ruin upon any who dared to support them. Yet, the more the Empire pushed, the more they found resistance, as species once too fearful to act had begun to unite, sharing technology, resources, and intelligence in a way the galaxy had never seen. Earth knew that its victory would not be enough to stop the Empire alone. Humanity poured its resources into building a fleet, no longer content to rely on the Proteus as their sole line of defense. Engineers and scientists worked day and night, applying the lessons from the Proteus to design new ships, expanding on its technology, creating vessels that could defend not only Earth but also their new allies. Their goal was no longer just survival. It was to stand as equals in a galaxy where every civilization, no matter how small, had the right to exist without fear of domination. The Empire, watching these developments, understood that they faced a threat unlike any before. They were no longer just dealing with Earth but with the possibility of an alliance strong enough to resist them. The idea of a galaxy united in opposition to the Empire was a nightmare they couldn't ignore. As humanity's allies grew, the Empire found its control slipping, the foundation of fear and dominance they had built cracking under the weight of a galaxy that had tasted the possibility of freedom. Earth's leaders held firm, refusing to back down, even as the Empire issued threats and ultimatums. They knew that their survival depended on unity, on standing alongside their allies, on proving to the galaxy that humanity was a force of resilience and strength. With each new ally, each ship added to their fleet, they sent a message to the Empire and to the galaxy. Earth was here to stay, and they would fight for a future where every world had the right to choose its path. In time, the Proteus returned to Earth, a symbol not just of victory but of everything humanity had become. Its crew, once just a team of dedicated individuals, were now heroes across countless worlds, remembered as those who had sparked a revolution. They had shown that courage could shatter the strongest chains, that resilience could turn the tide against even the most fearsome force. And they were prepared to do it again, to stand with their allies and ensure that no empire would ever rule by fear again. As the Empire looked on, they realized that their once unbreakable grip on the galaxy had faltered. They could no longer rely on intimidation alone, no longer assume that their might would silence opposition. The galaxy had changed, and the Empire now faced a united front that would not bow, that would not back down, that was ready to defend its freedom. Humanity, standing at the heart of this new alliance, knew that the fight ahead would be long and uncertain. But they had proven their strength, their ingenuity, and their will to survive. They would continue to build, to innovate, and to support those who stood beside them. Together, they had forged a future where fear would no longer be the ruling force. And with the galaxy's eyes upon them, humanity took its place as a symbol of defiance, ready for whatever came next.